The grand chamber of the Vorthray Diplomatic Center was a marvel of design, its towering ceilings reflecting an era of peace and cooperation. Multicolored banners representing the vast intergalactic council of races draped over the walls, their symbols dancing as light refracted through crystal skylights. The smell of exotic flowers and incense lingered in the air, a deliberate attempt to calm the nerves of every species present. Captain Marcus Kane sat in his designated seat among the human delegation, watching with mild disinterest as the Ithrians and Grelax squabbled over trade routes. Kane had never been fond of such diplomacy. It was tedious, filled with false smiles and hidden agendas. But he was a professional, and his reputation as a skilled mediator had earned him respect among the various factions. Even so, today felt different. The tension in the room was palpable, though no one had spoken it aloud. The Ithrians had brought a larger-than-usual security detail, their feathered guards posted at every entrance. The Grelac representatives, insectoid and imposing, had more of their warriors scattered about the room, standing motionless but alert, and the Vorthrii, reptilian and technologically superior to most, had their robotic sentinels at the ready. The uneasy atmosphere was subtle, but Marcus had been in enough of these meetings to feel when something was wrong. "I don't like it," Kane muttered under his breath, leaning toward his lieutenant, Commander Jacob Wells, a grizzled man with a scar running across his cheek from a skirmish long forgotten. "There's too much security here for a simple trade negotiation." "Agreed," Wells replied, scanning the room. "Feels like everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop." As if on cue, the massive doors at the back of the chamber slid open, the sound of clanking metal boots echoing ominously. A group of heavily armored Grelac soldiers marched in, their red eyes glowing behind insect-like helmets. They took their place beside their delegates, but their presence made Kane's skin crawl. "They brought Warborn," Kane noted. "Not typical for a trade negotiation." The Grelac Warborn were elite soldiers, engineered to be lethal, swift, and brutal. They weren't here for show. The Ithrian delegate, a tall, elegant figure with iridescent feathers, raised a slender arm, signaling for attention. "We must bring this session to order," she declared, her voice smooth but tense. "The Council will now review the human trade routes to ascertain their impact on the Grelac territories." Her words were cut short by the sound of a sudden crash. The entire chamber froze as a Grelac Warborn charged forward, moving faster than anyone could react. It wasn't headed for the Ithrians or Vorthrii. It was charging straight at the human delegation. Time slowed for Marcus. He had been in the military before taking up his diplomatic post, but this was different. The Grelac soldier was a blur, its spear gleaming under the artificial lights as it hurtled toward him with murderous intent. Marcus stood without thinking, his body reacting faster than his mind. His heart pounded, adrenaline surging through his veins. In one fluid motion, he raised his arm, catching the spear mere inches from his face. The force behind it was immense, enough to kill a normal man, but Marcus barely registered it. His grip tightened, snapping the weapon in half with an effortless twist of his wrist. The room fell silent. All eyes were on him, but Marcus couldn't process their shock. His attention was focused entirely on the soldier who had just tried to kill him. Without hesitation, Marcus lunged forward, his body moving in ways it hadn't since his military days, no, even beyond that. His instincts took over, movements precise and lethal. He grabbed the Warborn by its neck and slammed it into the ground with such force that the tiles cracked beneath the impact. The soldier didn't even have time to scream before it was unconscious, its armor crumpled like paper beneath Marcus's grip. Panting, Marcus stood over the fallen Grelac warrior, his heart still racing. What had just happened? Wells was at his side in an instant. "Captain, what the hell was that?" Marcus blinked, his mind racing to catch up with his actions. I don't know." The chamber erupted into chaos. The Ithrians were shouting, the Grelac delegates bristling, and the Vorthrii sentinels had drawn their weapons, unsure who to point them at. The human delegation remained frozen, all eyes on Marcus. Before anyone could speak, The Ithrian delegate, clearly shaken, stepped forward. "Captain Kane, what are you?" The question hung in the air like a sword, its edge sharp and accusing. Marcus didn't have an answer, but he knew that something had changed. He wasn't just a diplomat anymore. "I don't know," he finally said, his voice low. "But I think we need to find out." The incident sent shockwaves through the entire Galactic Council. The Greylac denied any knowledge of the attack, claiming their Warborn had acted without orders. But no one believed them. Not entirely. Something darker was at play, and Marcus found himself at the center of it. Over the next few days, Marcus underwent a series of tests, both medical and psychological. None of them could explain what had happened. His body showed no signs of enhancement, no cybernetics, no genetic tampering. He was, by all accounts, a normal human. Except he wasn't. As the days passed, Marcus began to notice changes. His senses were sharper, his reflexes faster. He could hear conversations across the room, feel the vibration of footsteps before they were audible, and predict movements in a way that felt almost unnatural. And then there were the dreams. Every night, Marcus dreamt of battle vast, bloody wars fought in ancient times. He saw armies clashing, weapons of unimaginable power, and human warriors at the heart of it all, leading the charge. They weren't soldiers, they were gods of war, unstoppable and unyielding. And in every dream, Marcus stood among them. "Marcus, you need to tell me what's going on," Wells said one evening, after they'd returned to their quarters on the Vorthri station. "Ever since the attack, you've been different." "I know," Marcus replied, his hands clenched into fists. "I've felt it. Something's changing, Jake. And it's not just me. It's us." Wells raised an eyebrow. "Us." "Humans," Marcus clarified, pacing the room. "I think there's something buried in our DNA, something ancient. It's like we've been asleep all this time, and now we're waking up." Wells frowned. "That sounds crazy, even for you, Marcus." "Does it?" Marcus stopped pacing, looking Wells dead in the eye. "You saw what I did in that chamber. You know I shouldn't have been able to do that, and it's not just me. I've been reading old reports, other humans have shown signs of it, too. Increased strength, speed, combat skills. It's all connected." Wells leaned back in his chair, processing the information. "So, what? We're some kind of dormant war gods?" Marcus chuckled darkly. "Maybe. But if we are, then someone's trying to wake us up." The revelation gnawed at Marcus. Each night the dreams became more vivid, more real. The ancient battlefields stretched on for miles, and the faces of his fellow warriors, humans, just like him, burned in his memory. There was no mistaking it now. These weren't just dreams, they were memories. Or rather, echoes of memories from a time long forgotten. As Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Vorthri station, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that something far bigger than himself was unfolding. Humanity had been thrust into the center of galactic history once again, not by choice, but by destiny. And he wasn't sure if that destiny was something to embrace or fear. "Captain Kane." The word, a cold voice interrupted his thoughts. Marcus turned to see Minister Valos, a tall and slender Vorthri official whose silvery scales shimmered under the dim station lights. Valos had been one of the key figures during the conference, always calm, always watching. But now there was a thinly veiled suspicion in his reptilian eyes. Marcus nodded. "Minister Valos, what can I do for you?" Valos approached slowly, his sharp features betraying no emotion. "I've been reviewing the events of the conference. The Grelac's actions were unexpected, but your response, it was beyond the capabilities of any known human. Would you care to explain?" Marcus held his gaze, feeling the weight of the question. He could lie, downplay it, claim it was just adrenaline, but Valos was too smart for that. And Marcus didn't even have a full answer himself. "I don't know what's happening," Marcus admitted, "but I'm not the only one. There are other reports, humans who've shown enhanced abilities. It's like something is waking up inside of us." Valos tilted his head slightly, considering his words. Enhanced abilities, you say? Fascinating. And do you believe this? Awakening is deliberate or accidental? Marcus hadn't thought of it that way, but the question lingered in the air, heavy with implication. Was it possible someone or something was deliberately triggering this change in humans? And for what purpose? I'm not sure, Marcus replied slowly, but I think it's time we start finding out. The next morning, Marcus received an urgent message from Commander Wells. It was brief, just a few words. Meet me at the Central Security Hub. We've got a problem. When Marcus arrived, the normally bustling security hub was eerily quiet. Wells stood in the corner, speaking in low tones to a few human soldiers. As soon as Marcus entered, they snapped to attention. "Captain, we've got a situation," Wells said, walking over with a data tablet in hand. "You're going to want to see this." Marcus took the tablet and glanced at the screen. His blood ran cold. It was surveillance footage from one of the outer colonies. A human mining crew was under attack by Galactic raiders, but something about the footage was wrong. The miners, ordinary civilians, were fighting back with a level of skill and ferocity that shouldn't have been possible. One man, in particular, caught Marcus's eye. He moved like a seasoned warrior, taking down two Galactic with his bare hands. His strikes were precise, lethal, and unnaturally strong. It was almost as if the man had transformed into a living weapon. "What the hell is this?" Marcus muttered. Wells crossed his arms. "That's what I've been trying to figure out. The colony is a mining outpost. No military personnel stationed there. These people shouldn't be able to fight like this. And yet, they're fighting like soldiers," Marcus finished, his mind racing. "It's not just me. This is spreading." Wells nodded grimly. "There's more. I pulled some old records from before we joined the Galactic Council. Stories, myths, really about ancient human warriors. We always thought they were exaggerations, legends. But now..." Marcus stared at the footage, his heart pounding. "It's real," he whispered. "All of it. We're not just humans, Jake. We're something more." By the time Marcus returned to his quarters, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. If the ancient stories were true, then humanity had once been feared across the galaxy. But why? What had caused their warlike nature to fade into history, and why was it returning now? He paced the room, trying to piece it all together. When his communicator chimed, it was Wells again. "Marcus, we've got a visitor," Wells said. "You're going to want to meet him." Marcus frowned. "Who is it?" "A Galactic, and he's asking for you by name." The Galactic warrior stood in the center of the room, his insectoid eyes gleaming in the low light. He was unarmed, his mandibles clicking nervously as Marcus and Wells entered. "I am Khazar," the Galactic said, his voice deep and resonant. "I've come to speak with the one they call Marcus Kane." Marcus exchanged a glance with Wells before stepping forward. "I'm Marcus Kane. What do you want?" Khazar lowered his head slightly, a gesture that Marcus recognized as submission among the Galactic. "I come with a warning. The Council fears what you have become." Marcus tensed. "What do you mean?" The Galactic straightened, his eyes locking onto Marcus's. "The humans, your kind, you were once the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever seen. But that power was sealed away, buried deep within your genes. The Council, the Ithrians, the Vorthrii, even my people, they feared you. And now that power is waking again." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "How do you know this?" Khazar's mandibles twitched. "Because I was there. Long ago, when the humans first came to our world. I fought against your kind. I watched as you tore through entire armies with ease. It was a time of war, a time when the galaxy trembled at the name of humanity." Wells scoffed. "You're telling me you were alive back then? That was thousands of years ago." Khazar nodded slowly. "Our lifespan is long, far longer than most. And I remember the day your people disappeared from the battlefield, their power sealed by the Council's decree. But now, something has changed. The seal is breaking." Marcus took a step forward. "Who broke it? Why now?" Khazar hesitated. I do not know who or why. But I know this, if the Council believes your kind is becoming a threat again, they will stop at nothing to destroy you." That night, Marcus sat alone in his quarters, Khazar's words echoing in his mind. The galaxy feared humanity not for what they were, but for what they could become. Dormant war gods, waiting to be unleashed. But who had triggered this awakening? And more importantly, could it be stopped? The warning from Khazar left Marcus restless. His mind was clouded with questions, but no clear answers. The Greylax's claim about the Council fearing humanity's reawakening gnawed at him. If this was true, humanity was walking on the knife's edge of extinction, and they didn't even know it. He had to get ahead of this. There were too many pieces missing from the puzzle: who had broken the seal, why it was happening now, and how they could survive the Council's response. As Marcus geared up to meet with the rest of his team, a single thought drove his actions: humanity needed to prepare for war. When Marcus stepped into the briefing room, Commander Wells and a few other high-ranking officers were already there, talking in low voices. The room was small and utilitarian, devoid of any decorative flourishes, just cold steel walls and a circular table with holographic projectors embedded in its surface. It had always struck Marcus as ironic how, despite all the advancements in technology, war planning still happened in rooms like this, with people hunched over maps and screens. "Captain Kane," Wells greeted him with a nod as Marcus entered. "We were just discussing our next steps." Marcus sat down, his face grim. "Khazar's warning is clear. The Council is watching us, and if they see our full potential waking up, they'll come after us." A silence settled over the room. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. One of the younger officers, Lieutenant Vega, spoke up. "Are we sure about this? I mean, we've all seen the footage, we've heard the stories, but are we really saying humanity has some kind of dormant war power?" "We are," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "And it's not just some power. It's something that terrified the galaxy once before. And now it's coming back." Wells leaned forward, his hands clasped together on the table. "We need to understand the extent of this awakening. If it's happening on the outer colonies, it could spread. But the real question is, how do we control it?" Marcus shook his head. "That's the thing. I don't think we can control it. Not yet, at least. We don't even know what triggered it. But what we do know is that if the Council thinks we're becoming a threat, they'll wipe us out without hesitation." "What do you suggest?" Vega asked, his face pale. Marcus turned to Wells. "We need to keep this under wraps for now. We don't need the Council breathing down our necks just yet. But we also need to gather more information. If this power is waking up in more humans, we need to find them and understand what's happening." Wells nodded. "Agreed. We'll set up a covert team to monitor any reports of unusual human activity. We'll gather data, but we'll keep it off the official channels. No one outside of this room needs to know." Marcus let out a breath. "Good. And one more thing, we need to be ready for the worst. If the Council does decide to move against us, we'll have to defend ourselves." A murmur of agreement passed through the room. They were soldiers, after all, and preparing for war was in their nature. But this time, the stakes were higher than any battle they'd ever fought before. As the meeting adjourned, Marcus found himself standing by the observation window once more, watching the stars flicker in the distance. He'd always found some peace in the vastness of space, but now it felt different, more like a battleground waiting to be fought over. He couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming, something that would change the course of humanity forever. "Captain," a voice called from behind him. It was Wells, his expression serious. "There's something else we need to talk about. Khazar, he's asked to stay with us. Says he wants to help." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Help? Why would a Greylax warrior want to help humans?" Wells shrugged. "I don't trust him either, but he seems sincere. He claims he's seen what humans are capable of, and he respects it. He said he's willing to fight by our side, if it comes to that." Marcus frowned, his mind racing. Having a Greylax ally could be valuable, especially one with knowledge of ancient history. But there was always the risk that Khazar had his own agenda, one that could jeopardize everything. "I don't trust him," Marcus said finally. "But we can't afford to turn down any help. Keep him close, but make sure he's monitored. If he steps out of line, we deal with him." Wells nodded. "Understood." As Wells turned to leave, Marcus's thoughts drifted once more. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and alliances were fragile. But if there was one thing he had learned in his years of service, it was that survival sometimes depended on the most unlikely of allies. The next few days were a blur of activity. Marcus's team worked around the clock, sifting through reports, monitoring communications, and analyzing every piece of intel they could find. The number of incidents involving humans displaying enhanced abilities was growing at an alarming rate. In mining colonies, on trade ships, even in civilian sectors, ordinary people were suddenly showing extraordinary strength, speed, and combat skills. The Council hadn't noticed yet, but it was only a matter of time. Marcus knew they were living on borrowed time. Then came the breakthrough. One of the reports flagged by the team involved a scientist on Earth, Dr. Elijah Klein, who had been studying human genetics for over 2 decades. His work had been largely theoretical until now. According to the report, Dr. Klein had recently uncovered an ancient genetic marker in human DNA, one that seemed to be linked to the dormant abilities waking up across the galaxy. Dr. Klein's research could be the key to understanding what's happening, Wells said, handing Marcus the file. "We need to get to him before anyone else does." Marcus scanned the file, his heart racing. If he's found the trigger for this, he's sitting on a ticking time bomb. The Council would kill for this information. "We need to bring him in," Wells said. "But we'll have to do it quietly. If the Council finds out we're investigating this, it could spark an interstellar incident." Marcus nodded. "We'll send a small team. I'll go myself." Wells gave him a sharp look. "You sure that's wise? If something goes wrong—" "I need to see this through," Marcus cut him off. "If Klein has answers, I need to hear them firsthand. We can't afford to take any chances." Wells sighed, but didn't argue. "All right, I'll put together a team. We leave tomorrow." The journey to Earth was uneventful, but the tension on the ship was palpable. Marcus could feel it in the air. The crew knew they were heading into dangerous territory. If the Council found out what they were doing, there would be hell to pay. As they approached Earth's orbit, Marcus stared out the window, the blue and green planet filling the view. It had been years since he'd been back home, and despite everything that had happened, there was still something comforting about the sight of it. The shuttle touched down in a remote landing zone near Dr. Klein's facility, a small research outpost nestled in the mountains. Marcus and his team disembarked, their weapons ready but concealed. They couldn't afford to draw attention to themselves. As they approached the facility, Marcus's gut tightened. Something felt off. The silence was too complete, too still. He signaled for the team to stay alert. "Let's move in," he whispered, his hand on his sidearm. The door to the facility slid open with a soft hiss, and they stepped inside. The interior was dark, the only sound the faint hum of machinery, but there was no sign of Dr. Klein. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught Marcus's eye. He spun around, his weapon drawn, just as a figure stepped out of the shadows. "Captain Kane, I presume," the man said, his voice calm. "I've been expecting you." It was Dr. Elijah Klein. Dr. Klein's sudden appearance set the entire team on edge. Marcus kept his sidearm trained on the scientist, his eyes scanning the dimly lit room for any signs of a trap. But Klein didn't seem like a threat. He stood there calmly, hands by his sides, his face illuminated by the faint glow of the nearby consoles. "You've been expecting me?" Marcus asked, his voice low but steady. "How could you know I'd be here?" Klein smiled faintly, his gaze unwavering. "The moment you left that outer colony, I knew you'd come looking for answers. It was only a matter of time." Marcus narrowed his eyes, lowering his weapon slightly. "We don't have time for cryptic answers, Doctor. We know something's happening to humans, and we know you're sitting on research that could explain it." Klein gestured toward a console behind him. "You're right, and I've been working on this for decades, long before anyone started noticing. I've always suspected there was something dormant in our species, something powerful. Now, I've finally confirmed it." He tapped a few keys on the console, and a holographic display flickered to life. The image that appeared was a complex DNA sequence, highlighted in neon blue. Klein's finger traced the sequence as he spoke. "This is the genetic marker I discovered. It's ancient, older than any other part of our genome. Most of it has been inactive for millennia, but it's still there, buried deep within every human. And now it's waking up." Marcus stepped closer, studying the hologram. "Waking up how? What triggered it?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Klein said with a slight chuckle. "I don't know for sure, but I have a theory. This marker, it's connected to our survival instincts, our ability to adapt and overcome. You see, humans aren't just resilient, we're wired for war. Every time our species has faced extinction, this part of our DNA has activated, pushing us to evolve, to fight back harder than ever before. But something, or someone, suppressed it." Klein paused, his eyes darkening. "I believe the Galactic Council is responsible." The room fell silent as the weight of Klein's words sank in. Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "You're saying the Council knew about this all along?" Klein nodded. "I don't have definitive proof, but the timing is too perfect. They've always feared humanity, and now we know why. The Council has been suppressing this genetic trait in us for thousands of years. They've kept us docile, afraid that if we fully awaken, we'd become unstoppable." Marcus clenched his fists. The idea that humanity had been manipulated on such a fundamental level was infuriating, but it also made sense. The Council's tight control over human expansion, their constant monitoring, it all pointed to a deeper, more sinister agenda. Wells, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "If what you're saying is true, then why is the marker waking up now? What's changed?" Klein's face grew serious. "I believe the suppression is failing. Something has weakened the Council's control. Whether it's due to the expansion of our colonies or some external force, I don't know. But whatever it is, the genetic potential that's been locked away is beginning to resurface, and that's why the Council will stop at nothing to destroy us." Marcus's mind raced. The implications were staggering. If humanity was indeed on the verge of unlocking its full potential, they would have to act fast. The Council wouldn't wait for them to figure things out, they would strike first, and they would strike hard. "We need to prepare," Marcus said, his voice firm. "If the Council finds out about this, they'll come for us." Klein nodded. "That's why I've been keeping my research hidden, but it won't be long before they catch wind of it. There's one last piece of the puzzle. I need to confirm one final test that could prove everything I've been saying." "What kind of test?" Marcus asked. Klein hesitated for a moment before answering. "I've developed a way to artificially trigger the genetic awakening in a controlled environment. If I can successfully activate the dormant potential in one human, we'll have irrefutable proof of what we're capable of. But it's risky. The process could be volatile." Marcus glanced at Wells, who gave him a nod. "Do it. We don't have any other choice." Klein led the group deeper into the facility, through a series of security doors and down a narrow corridor that ended at a large, reinforced chamber. Inside was a sleek, cylindrical pod connected to several machines. The chamber hummed with energy, the air thick with tension. "This is it," Klein said, gesturing to the pod. "The subject is already prepped. Once the process begins, there's no turning back." Marcus approached the pod, his eyes narrowing as he saw the figure inside. It was a man, heavily sedated, his body restrained by mechanical arms that held him in place. The man's face was calm, unaware of the dangerous experiment about to begin. "Who is he?" Marcus asked. "One of my volunteers," Klein replied. "A former soldier. He understands the risks." With a deep breath, Klein activated the sequence. The machines whirred to life, and a low hum filled the room as energy surged into the pod. The man inside stirred slightly, his eyelids fluttering, but he remained unconscious as the process began. For several minutes, nothing happened. The team watched in tense silence as the machines continued their work. Then, without warning, the man's body convulsed violently. His muscles bulged, veins protruding from his skin as his heart rate skyrocketed. Alarms blared, and the chamber's lights flickered as the energy levels spiked dangerously. "Shut it down," Wells shouted, but Klein shook his head. "Wait, it's almost complete." The man's body convulsed again, but this time it was different. His muscles seemed to stabilize, his breathing became more regular, and slowly his eyes opened. They were no longer the dull, glazed eyes of a sedated man. Instead, they burned with intensity, glowing faintly in the dim light of the chamber. Marcus took a step back as the man looked around, his gaze sharp and calculating. There was something different about him, something powerful. "Klein, what have you done?" Marcus whispered. The man in the pod slowly sat up, the restraints falling away as if they were nothing. He flexed his fingers, testing his strength, and then turned his gaze toward Marcus and the others. "I feel different," the man said, his voice low and measured. Klein smiled triumphantly. "It worked. He's awakened." But before anyone could respond, the man moved faster than anyone could react. In the blink of an eye, he was out of the pod, standing directly in front of Marcus, his expression unreadable. For a tense moment, no one spoke. Then the man lowered his gaze and smiled. "It's like a dream. Everything is clearer now, sharper." Marcus swallowed hard. This was the awakening. Klein had been talking about, the dormant power that had been locked away for centuries. And now it was free. But as the reality of the situation settled in, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed a line they couldn't come back from. The Council would come for them, and when they did, humanity would have to fight back with everything they had. The aftermath of the awakening left Marcus feeling uneasy. He had seen enhanced humans before, soldiers with cybernetic implants, chemically augmented for combat, but this was something different. This man, this volunteer, radiated raw power, like a dormant volcano that had just erupted. There was no mistaking it. The man was no longer ordinary. He was something more, something far beyond anything Marcus had ever seen. Klein, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. He stood beside the awakened man, marveling at the results of his experiment, a gleam of triumph in his eyes. "Do you understand what this means?" Klein asked, his voice filled with awe. "This is the future of humanity, no longer bound by the limitations the Council imposed on us. With this, we can fight back, reclaim our place in the galaxy." Marcus remained silent, watching the man as he adjusted to his new reality. There was something unsettling about how quickly he had adapted, how calm he was after such a radical transformation. The glow in his eyes had dimmed slightly, but it was still there, flickering beneath the surface like a dormant fire. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked, his voice cautious. The man looked at him, his gaze sharp and intense. "Stronger. Faster. It's like everything has slowed down. I can see things more clearly now." Wells stepped forward, his hand hovering near his sidearm. "Do you still know who you are? Do you remember your mission?" The man nodded slowly. "I remember everything. But it's different now. My mind is clearer. I can see the patterns, the connections I missed before." Klein grinned, clearly pleased with the results. "You see? This is what humanity was meant to be. We were always capable of so much more, but the Council feared us. They suppressed our evolution, kept us from reaching our true potential. But now, we can finally take control of our own destiny." Marcus clenched his jaw, his mind racing with the implications of what they had just witnessed. The power this man possessed, if it could be replicated on a larger scale, humanity would indeed be a force to be reckoned with. But at what cost? "How stable is this?" Marcus asked, turning to Klein. "Is he safe?" Klein hesitated for a moment, his expression faltering. "There are still unknowns. The process is new, and we haven't fully mapped out the long-term effects. But in theory, the subject should be perfectly stable." "In theory?" Wells repeated, his tone skeptical. Kline shrugged. "Every scientific breakthrough comes with risks. But if we want to survive, if we want to win this war, this is the only way. The Council won't stop until they've wiped us out. We need every advantage we can get." Marcus couldn't argue with that. The Council had already shown their willingness to annihilate entire colonies just to maintain control. If they found out about this genetic awakening, they wouldn't hesitate to eradicate every human who posed a threat to their dominance. But there was still something that didn't sit right with him. Kline's eagerness to push forward without fully understanding the consequences worried Marcus. They were walking a dangerous line, and one wrong step could spell disaster. Before Marcus could voice his concerns, the facility's alarms blared to life, the red emergency lights flashing in rhythmic pulses. A voice crackled over the intercom, panicked and breathless. "Dr. Kline, we have incoming. Unidentified ships just breached the atmosphere. We're being surrounded." Marcus's blood ran cold. "The Council," he muttered under his breath. "They're early," Kline said, his face draining of color. "I didn't think they'd find us so soon." Wells was already on his comms, barking orders to the rest of the team. "Get everyone ready. We need to hold them off long enough to get Kline and his research out of here. Move." Marcus turned to Kline, his expression grim. "You need to destroy everything. If the Council gets their hands on this data, they'll use it to wipe us out for good." Kline's eyes widened. "Destroy it? But this is the culmination of my life's work. We can't just—" "Do it," Marcus snapped. "If the Council finds out what you've done here, they'll use it against us. This needs to stay buried until we're ready." Kline hesitated for a moment, clearly torn between his duty to science and the reality of their situation. But then he nodded, rushing to the consoles to initiate the data wipe. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the first shockwave hit. The facility's shields strained under the impact, flickering for a brief moment before stabilizing again. Marcus knew they wouldn't hold for long. "We need to move," Wells said, grabbing his rifle. "The Council won't give us much time. We'll hold them off while you finish here." Marcus turned to the awakened man, who had remained silent throughout the chaos. "You up for this?" The man smiled, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "I've never felt more ready." Together, they sprinted toward the exit, the sounds of battle growing louder as they approached the surface. The facility was in chaos, soldiers scrambling to their positions as Council ships descended from the sky, their sleek, black hulls casting long shadows over the barren landscape. Marcus felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as he raised his weapon, scanning the horizon for targets. The Council's forces were well-trained and heavily equipped, but Marcus had faced worse odds before. And now, they had something the Council didn't, a weapon they didn't even know existed yet. The first wave of Council troops hit the ground hard, their boots kicking up dust as they advanced on the facility. Marcus and his team opened fire, their shots precise and deadly. The Council soldiers, clad in advanced combat armor, moved with military precision, but they were met with fierce resistance. The awakened man was a force of nature on the battlefield. He moved faster than Marcus could track, cutting through the Council troops with brutal efficiency. His strength was terrifying. He tore through the armored soldiers as if they were made of paper, his fists and feet moving in a blur of destruction. Marcus watched in awe as the man fought, his enhanced abilities on full display. This was the power Kline had spoken of, the dormant war god within every human, unleashed at last. But even as Marcus marveled at the man's prowess, a nagging doubt gnawed at the back of his mind. Was this really the answer? Was this the future they were fighting for? The battle raged on, the facility's defenses slowly crumbling under the relentless assault. Marcus could see the Council's reinforcements landing in the distance, more troops, more ships. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. "We can't hold them off forever," Wells shouted over the din of battle. "Kline needs to finish that data wipe now, or we're done." Marcus gritted his teeth, firing off another burst of shots as he backed toward the entrance of the facility. We need to buy him more time. Hold the line. But even as he shouted the command, Marcus knew it was a losing battle. The Council wouldn't stop until they had crushed every last human in this facility. And unless Klein could finish his work, the secret of humanity's awakening would be lost forever or worse, fall into the hands of the enemy. As the next wave of Council troops advanced, Marcus steeled himself for what might be his final stand. They would fight to the last breath. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't help but wonder. What price were they truly willing to pay for victory? The crackle of gunfire, the dull thuds of explosives, and the screams of the dying merged into a symphony of chaos. Marcus's breath came in ragged gasps, his vision blurred by sweat and smoke. He pushed forward, driving his team to hold the line, even as the weight of the Council's assault threatened to overwhelm them. Wells was beside him, grimly unloading rounds into the advancing Council soldiers. "We're losing ground," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. "They're too strong." Marcus knew he was right. The Council's elite shock troops had landed, and the facility's defenses were buckling. These soldiers were different, faster, stronger, and more coordinated. But Marcus had seen this before. They were the Council's prized warriors, enhanced, but artificially so. They relied on cybernetics and gene mods, pale imitations of what true human potential could achieve. He glanced toward the awakened man, who was still fighting with an intensity that bordered on terrifying. The man was a blur of motion, ripping through the Council's soldiers with ease, his every movement precise and deadly. But even he couldn't hold off the waves of reinforcements forever. "We need a miracle," Wells muttered, firing another round into an approaching soldier. As if on cue, Klein's voice crackled over Marcus's earpiece. "The data's been wiped. I'm purging the backups now, but we've got a problem. Their ships have landed a squad near the core of the facility. They're trying to breach the inner sanctum." Marcus cursed under his breath. "We can't let them get to the core. If they take that, we're finished." "I'll hold them off," the awakened man called out, his voice resonating with a strange calm amidst the chaos. Marcus hesitated. The man had already proven his capabilities, but sending him alone into the heart of the enemy's assault felt like a gamble, a dangerous one. "I'll go with him," Wells said, his expression grim. "You stay here and coordinate the defense." "No," Marcus replied sharply. "You're needed here, Wells. This place is falling apart. I'll go." Before Wells could argue, Marcus was already moving, ducking and weaving through the crossfire as he made his way toward the awakened man. The man turned to him, eyes glowing faintly in the smoke-filled air. "Ready?" Marcus asked. The man's lips curved into a cold, determined smile. "Let's finish this." They moved swiftly through the facility's twisting corridors, the sound of battle fading behind them as they descended deeper into the complex. The core of the facility housed the main power generators and the experimental chambers where Klein had conducted his research. It was the heart of their operation, and if the Council took it, they would have everything they needed to track down every other human stronghold. As they approached the entrance to the core, Marcus slowed, raising his hand to signal the man beside him. The air was tense, heavy with the anticipation of confrontation. The doors ahead were sealed, but Marcus knew the Council's soldiers were already inside, working to breach the final barrier. "Council forces will have rigged explosives. We can't let them get near the generators," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. The man nodded, his expression unreadable. Marcus took a deep breath and tapped into the control panel beside the door. With a low hiss, the door slid open, revealing a large chamber filled with machinery and towering power conduits, and in the center of the room, a squad of Council soldiers was already setting charges on the primary power grid. "Go!" Marcus shouted, raising his rifle and firing a burst of rounds into the nearest soldier. The Council troops reacted with lethal precision, returning fire in an instant. Marcus ducked behind a console, the metal sparking as bullets ricocheted off its surface. But the awakened man didn't hesitate. He surged forward, a blur of motion as he closed the distance between him and the enemy. The council soldiers were fast, but the man was faster. He tore through their ranks with brutal efficiency, dodging their attacks and disarming them with inhuman strength. In seconds, the room was cleared, the soldiers lying motionless on the ground. Marcus stepped forward cautiously, scanning the room for any remaining threats. "Clear?" The man nodded, wiping the blood from his hands. "For now, but they'll send more." Marcus moved to the charges, carefully disarming them one by one. His hands worked quickly, but his mind was racing. The council had moved faster than he'd anticipated, and their resources seemed endless. If they didn't get reinforcements soon, it wouldn't matter how powerful the awakened man was, they would be overrun. As he finished disarming the last charge, Marcus heard a faint hum, followed by a low rumble that reverberated through the floor. "What was that?" the man asked, his eyes narrowing. Marcus frowned, glancing at the control panels. "I don't know, but it's coming from deeper in the core." They moved quickly, navigating the labyrinth of hallways that led to the facility's inner sanctum. The deeper they went, the more ominous the vibrations became, until finally, they reached a massive door marked with warning symbols. "This is it," Marcus muttered, eyeing the door warily. The heart of the facility. The door slid open with a low hiss, revealing a cavernous chamber bathed in an eerie red glow. In the center of the room stood a massive cylindrical structure, Klein's creation, the very machine that had unlocked humanity's dormant potential. But something was wrong. The machine pulsed with energy, its core glowing brighter with each passing second, and standing at the controls, bathed in the red light, was a figure Marcus hadn't expected to see. "Klein." "Klein!" Marcus shouted, his voice filled with confusion and anger. "What the hell are you doing?" Klein turned slowly, a look of regret on his face. "I'm sorry, Marcus, but it's too late to stop now." The air in the room felt charged, the pressure mounting as the machine hummed louder, its energy reaching critical levels. "You can't do this," Marcus shouted. "You'll destroy everything. We agreed to shut it down." Klein's eyes were filled with a strange, desperate determination. "You don't understand. The council won't stop. Not until we're all dead. But with this, we can finally be free." "Free?" Marcus repeated, his voice thick with disbelief. "You're going to get us all killed." Klein shook his head, his expression filled with sorrow. "No, Marcus. I'm going to save us. I'm going to finish what we started." The awakened man stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You're playing with forces you don't understand, Klein. Shut it down." Klein's hand hovered over the controls, his eyes darting between Marcus and the machine. I can't stop now, not when we're so close." "Close to what?" Marcus demanded, his patience wearing thin. "To unlocking humanity's true potential," Klein whispered, his voice barely audible. "We were meant to be gods, Marcus, and now we will be." The machine pulsed again, the red glow intensifying until the room was bathed in blinding light. Marcus shielded his eyes, his heart pounding in his chest. Whatever Klein was doing, it was reaching its climax, and the consequences could be catastrophic. "Klein, stop!" Marcus shouted, but it was too late. With a deafening roar, the machine surged, releasing a shockwave of energy that rippled through the facility, sending Marcus and the awakened man crashing to the ground. The world around them blurred, the air crackling with power. And then everything went dark. The darkness was suffocating, thick and impenetrable. For a moment, Marcus thought he was dead, that Klein's machine had killed them all. But slowly, painfully, his senses returned. The cold metal floor beneath him, the acrid scent of smoke and scorched machinery, the distant echoes of groaning metal and distant gunfire. His eyes fluttered open, and he winced at the dull throbbing in his head. The room was dimly lit now, the red glow from the machine reduced to a faint flicker. It had powered down, but the damage had been done. "Klein," Marcus muttered, forcing himself to his feet. Beside him, the awakened man groaned and pushed himself upright, shaking off the debris. He glanced around, his eyes scanning the room for threats, but the only movement came from the erratic flickering of the damaged equipment. "Klein!" Marcus shouted again, his voice hoarse. He spotted Klein near the base of the machine, lying motionless. Marcus rushed over, his heart racing. As he knelt beside Klein, he could see the man's chest rise and fall weakly, his face pale and drawn. Klein's hand twitched, and his eyes fluttered open, meeting Marcus's gaze. "It's too late," Klein whispered, his voice barely audible. "What have you done?" Marcus demanded, his anger barely contained. "You've doomed us all." Klein shook his head weakly, his lips curling into a faint smile. "No, Marcus, I've given us a chance. The Council, they won't stop until we're all gone. But now they'll have to face what we really are." Marcus gritted his teeth, frustration and anger boiling inside him. Klein had always been reckless, always pushing the boundaries of what was safe or ethical. But this was madness. "I trusted you," Marcus said, his voice low, filled with bitterness. "We all did." Klein's eyes dimmed, the life draining from him. You'll see what we're capable of." With that, Klein exhaled one final, ragged breath and went still. Marcus stared at his lifeless form, a mix of anger and sorrow swirling within him. The man had been brilliant, but in the end, his ambition had driven him to insanity. The awakened man stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied Klein's body. "We need to leave. The Council will send more reinforcements." Marcus nodded, standing up and glancing at the now quiet machine. Whatever Klein had done, it had triggered something, but whether it was a gift or a curse, Marcus couldn't be sure. "We'll finish this later," Marcus muttered, tearing his gaze away from Klein. "Let's get back to Wells and the others." They moved quickly, retracing their steps through the facility's winding corridors. The sound of distant fighting grew louder as they neared the surface, and Marcus's heart sank. They had lost too much ground. The Council's forces had pushed deeper into the facility, and the few defenders left were struggling to hold the line. When they reached the main control room, Marcus was greeted by a scene of utter chaos. Wells was at the center, barking orders as soldiers fired desperately at the advancing Council troops. Bodies littered the floor, and the air was thick with the smell of smoke and blood. "We're being overrun," Wells shouted as Marcus approached. "We can't hold them off much longer." Marcus scanned the battlefield, his mind racing. The Council troops were closing in from all sides, their heavy armor and advanced weaponry giving them the advantage. His team was outnumbered and outgunned, and there was no way they could win this fight through sheer force. But then Marcus felt it. A strange sensation deep in his core. It was subtle at first, like the faint hum of distant machinery. But as the Council forces closed in, the sensation grew stronger, pulsing through his veins with increasing intensity. The awakened man, standing beside Marcus, seemed to sense it too. He glanced at Marcus, his eyes widening. "Do you feel that?" Marcus nodded slowly, his heart pounding. What is it?" The man's expression darkened. "It's what Klein was talking about. The machine, it triggered something. Something inside us." Marcus didn't have time to question it. The Council soldiers were almost upon them, their weapons raised, ready to finish the job. But as they drew closer, something strange happened. The air around Marcus seemed to thrum with energy, and his body felt lighter, faster, stronger. Without thinking, he moved. In one fluid motion, Marcus leaped forward, covering the distance between himself and the nearest soldier in an instant. His fist connected with the soldier's helmet, shattering it with a single blow. The soldier crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Marcus blinked, staring down at his hand in disbelief. He had never moved like that before, never been that fast, that powerful. The awakened man was beside him in an instant, tearing through the Council troops with a ferocity that Marcus had only seen glimpses of before. The two of them moved like forces of nature, their bodies responding to the threat with an instinctual, almost primal violence. Within moments, the tide of battle had shifted. The Council troops, once confident in their superior firepower and numbers, were now falling back in disarray, unable to keep up with Marcus and the awakened man's newfound speed and strength. Wells stared in awe as Marcus ripped through the enemy ranks, his disbelief mirrored on the faces of the remaining human soldiers. They fought on with renewed vigor, rallying behind Marcus and the awakened man as they pushed the Council forces back. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the Council soldiers were either dead or retreating. The facility was secure, but the cost had been high. Bodies of both human and Council soldiers littered the ground, and the air was thick with the smell of death. Marcus stood amidst the carnage, breathing heavily. The sensation of power still thrummed through his body, but it was starting to fade, leaving him feeling drained and exhausted. Wells approached, his face a mix of relief and confusion. What the hell just happened? Marcus shook his head, wiping the blood from his face. I don't know, but Klein, he did something. Whatever he was working on, it triggered something in us. Something we didn't even know we had. Wells glanced at the awakened man, who stood silently, staring at the horizon with a faraway look in his eyes. And what about him? What is he? Marcus hesitated, the words catching in his throat. He didn't know how to answer that question, didn't know how to explain what had just happened. All he knew was that something had changed. Something fundamental. We need to regroup, Marcus said finally, his voice firm. This isn't over. Wells nodded, though his eyes still held a flicker of unease. What do we do now? Marcus looked out at the battlefield, at the destruction they had wrought. The Council would send more troops, there was no doubt about that. But now, Marcus wasn't sure that even they knew what they were dealing with. We prepare, Marcus said grimly. Because whatever happens next, we're not the same as we were before. The silence after the battle was oppressive. Marcus stood amidst the wreckage, his body aching from the surge of power that had ripped through him. His mind was a chaotic mess, trying to reconcile what had just happened. He felt drained, not just physically, but mentally, as if part of him had been awakened, and then smothered under the weight of what he'd become. Wells was still nearby, ordering the remaining soldiers to secure the facility and tend to the wounded. The man's face betrayed a mix of awe and fear every time he glanced at Marcus. There was no hiding what had happened now. The Council forces had been routed, but it hadn't been by human grit and determination alone. It was something deeper, something older and far more dangerous. Marcus, Wells said, stepping cautiously toward him. What was that back there? You and the awakened man, you moved like gods. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the residual hum of the power that had coursed through him. It was faint now, like the embers of a dying fire. Whatever Klein had unlocked within them, it had stirred something ancient, something dormant in their very blood. I don't know, Marcus finally admitted, his voice thick with exhaustion. But it's more than we ever realized. Klein was right. Humanity isn't just what we thought we were. Wells clenched his jaw. And now the Council knows. They'll come back, with more forces, better prepared. Marcus nodded, his thoughts racing. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The Council wouldn't give up, they couldn't afford to. And now, Marcus understood why the Council had always been so intent on subjugating humanity. They were afraid of what lay dormant within them, waiting to be unleashed. The awakened man, who had been standing in quiet contemplation, finally spoke, his voice a low rumble. This power, it's been suppressed for a reason. The machine only reawakened a fraction of it, but it's in all of us. Every human carries this potential. Marcus turned to face him. Do you know why? Why would we have something like this inside us, and never know? The awakened man's eyes were distant, his expression unreadable. Long ago, before the Council existed, there were wars unlike anything you can imagine. Humanity wasn't always the underdog, Marcus. We were once the rulers of the stars, feared and respected. But the power we wielded was too great. It nearly destroyed everything. Marcus frowned. Then why suppress it? Why hide it from ourselves? Because we couldn't control it, the man said, his gaze locking with Marcus's. We were too dangerous. The Council was formed in the aftermath of those wars, as a way to ensure that humanity's power would never be unleashed again. They've spent millennia trying to keep us in check, rewriting history, controlling our development. But Klein found the truth. He just didn't live long enough to understand the consequences. Marcus's mind reeled. It was hard to fathom a history lost to time, a past where humanity had been gods among the stars. But the weight of the power he had felt in battle, the way his body had responded without hesitation, it all lined up. The Council feared them, not for what they were, but for what they could become. We have to leave, Marcus said, the urgency rising in his voice. The Council will be back, and we can't hold them off forever. Not like this. Wells nodded grimly. We need to find a place to regroup, somewhere they won't expect. The awakened man's eyes narrowed. There's one place they won't follow. A place where even the Council fears to tread. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Where? The cradle, the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's where we were born, the birthplace of our species. The Council sealed it off centuries ago, but it's still there, hidden in the depths of space. It's the only place we'll find answers. The cradle, Wells murmured, his brow furrowed. I've heard the stories. They say it's a graveyard, a forbidden world where time itself has forgotten to move. The awakened man nodded. It's more than that. The cradle holds the key to everything, the source of our power, and the truth about why we were cast down. Marcus's mind raced. It sounded like a suicide mission. If the Council had locked it away, there was no telling what dangers lurked there. But it was also their only shot. They couldn't stay here and wait for the Council to wipe them out. They had to move. How do we get there? Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. There's a ship, the awakened man said, hidden in an old outpost, far from here. It's ancient, but it was designed for journeys like this. If we can reach it, we'll have a chance. Wells glanced between them, his face pale. And if we don't make it? We don't have a choice, Marcus replied, his tone firm. If we stay, we die. If we leave, we might stand a chance. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the distant sounds of the soldiers tending to the wounded. Marcus could see the weight of the decision on Wells's face, the fear of the unknown, the gravity of what lay ahead. But there was no time for doubt. They had already crossed the line. We leave at first light, Marcus said, turning to the awakened man. Show us the way. The man nodded, his face set in determination. I'll prepare the coordinates. But know this, Marcus, once we enter the cradle, there's no turning back. What we find there could change everything, not just for us, but for the entire galaxy. Marcus clenched his fists, the echoes of Klein's last words ringing in his ears. This was bigger than any of them had realized. The Council wasn't just fighting to control humanity, they were fighting to keep a secret that could upend everything. We'll be ready, Marcus said quietly. As the night deepened, Marcus found himself alone, staring out over the ruins of the battlefield. The power that had surged through him was gone now, replaced by an aching exhaustion. But the memory of it lingered, the way his body had moved, the strength that had flowed through him. It had felt natural, as if it had always been there, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Klein had been a fool, but he had also been right. Humanity had been suppressed, controlled, manipulated. But now the truth was out, and there was no going back. The cradle, the birthplace of their species, it sounded like a myth, a legend from a time long forgotten. But if it was real, if the answers they sought were there, then it was worth the risk. They had nothing left to lose. As Marcus turned to head back inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible awaited them. The Council had gone to great lengths to bury the past, to hide the truth of what humanity had once been. But soon, that truth would be uncovered, and the galaxy would never be the same. The dawn crept slowly across the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink as Marcus gathered his thoughts. The cool morning air bit at his skin, a stark reminder that time was not on their side. Wells and the awakened man were busy preparing the last of their gear, securing weapons and supplies for the journey ahead. They needed to leave before the Council's forces returned, and every moment counted. As the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the debris of their recent battle, Marcus took a deep breath and tried to center himself. He thought of Klein, of his ambition and sacrifice. They were stepping into a void that might swallow them whole, but they owed it to him to seek the truth. "Are we ready?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the apprehension bubbling beneath the surface. He approached Wells, who was double-checking their supplies. Wells nodded, a grim determination etched on his face. "Everything's set. We just need to find that ship." "Right," Marcus replied. "What about the soldiers? They need to come with us. We can't leave them behind." Wells frowned, glancing toward the makeshift camp. "I don't know if it's safe. The Council might strike while we're gone, but they'll need us if we're going to survive this." The awakened man, who had been silent until now, stepped closer. "You're right, but we can't take everyone. We need to be fast and agile, able to maneuver without drawing attention. It's a risk, but we'll have to choose who to bring." Marcus felt a knot in his stomach. "Then we take the ones who can fight, the ones who believe in this mission. The rest, we need to get them to safety." The decision weighed heavily on him, but it had to be made. They couldn't be slowed down by too many people, especially when the Council was likely regrouping. Marcus felt the gravity of leadership pressing on him, and the burden of making these choices was almost unbearable. They called a quick meeting, gathering the remaining soldiers, those who had fought valiantly alongside them. Marcus explained the situation, the need to regroup, to find the ship that would take them to the cradle. As he spoke, he noticed the glint of determination in their eyes, the understanding that they were part of something greater now. There was no longer a question of survival. This was a fight for the very soul of humanity. After much deliberation, they selected a small group, 10 soldiers, each one committed to the cause. Marcus felt a pang of regret for those left behind, but he reassured himself that they would be safer here, away from the Council's reach. "Let's move out," Marcus commanded, leading the group through the ruins and out toward the wilderness that surrounded the facility. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown, but he steeled himself for the journey ahead. The path to the ship was winding and treacherous. They navigated through dense foliage and jagged terrain, moving swiftly but cautiously. The weight of the mission pressed on Marcus's shoulders, but he focused on the voices of his comrades' words of encouragement, camaraderie, and shared purpose. As they traveled deeper into the wilderness, the landscape shifted. Towering trees with twisting branches loomed overhead, their canopies creating a natural archway that felt both ominous and inviting. The air buzzed with life. Strange, alien creatures flitted through the underbrush, and the distant sound of rushing water echoed like a heartbeat. After hours of trekking, they arrived at a clearing where the outpost lay hidden among the trees. It was an old structure, covered in moss and vines, its walls crumbling but still standing resolute against the encroaching wilderness. "This is it," the awakened man said, his voice tinged with reverence. "The ship is inside." As they approached the outpost, a sense of awe washed over Marcus. This place felt sacred, as if it were a remnant of a forgotten time. He could almost feel the echoes of history thrumming through the air. "Stay alert," Wells warned, scanning the area for any signs of danger. "We don't know if the Council has found this place yet." They entered the outpost cautiously, weapons drawn. The interior was dark, illuminated only by the flickering light of ancient panels that lined the walls. Dust motes danced in the beams of light, giving the space an ethereal quality. Marcus's heart raced as they descended deeper into the building. The ship was located in a hangar at the back, a massive structure that had seen better days, but still held an air of power and potential. It loomed before them, an intricate design of metal and energy, its sleek body adorned with markings that hinted at its long-lost glory. "Wow," one of the soldiers whispered, stepping forward in awe. "Is that—" "Yes," the awakened man said, his eyes glinting with excitement. This ship was built for long-distance travel, able to navigate the complexities of space. It's our only chance to reach the cradle. They moved closer, and Marcus could see the ship's controls, worn but functional. His hands trembled with anticipation as he ran his fingers over the console. "Can you get it operational?" he asked, turning to the awakened man. "Give me a moment," the man replied, kneeling by the ship's systems and accessing the controls. The air felt electric, charged with possibility. As the awakened man worked, Marcus took a moment to observe the others. They were anxious but resolute, their expressions a mix of hope and fear. This journey could lead to salvation or destruction, and the weight of their decision loomed large. Suddenly, the ship's systems hummed to life, illuminating the hangar in a soft blue glow. The awakened man looked up, a triumphant grin on his face. "It's operational. We can leave." "Good," Marcus replied, a surge of relief washing over him. "Let's move." They hurried aboard the ship, the soldiers following closely behind. As Marcus settled into the pilot's seat, he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. This was what he had been trained for, leading a team into the unknown, embracing the chaos that lay ahead. The awakened man joined him at the control panel, guiding him through the launch sequence. "Prepare for takeoff. We'll need to generate enough thrust to break through the atmosphere. Once we're in space, I'll navigate us to the cradle." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding as the ship's engines roared to life. The vibrations resonated through the hull, a powerful reminder of the journey they were about to embark upon. As the ship lifted off the ground, Marcus glanced out the viewport. The outpost receded beneath them, a solitary bastion against the impending storm. The council would come. They would not let this opportunity slip through their fingers. The ship broke free from the trees, soaring into the sky, leaving the crumbling remnants of their past behind. Marcus felt a strange mix of exhilaration and fear. They were entering a new chapter, one that held the promise of danger and discovery. "Steady," the awakened man urged, his eyes fixed on the instruments. "We're entering the atmosphere now. Hold on tight." With a surge, the ship rocketed upward, breaking through the layers of clouds. The blue sky faded into darkness, and the stars emerged, twinkling like distant beacons of hope. Marcus felt the weight of the universe pressing down on him, and for a moment, he was overwhelmed by the enormity of what lay ahead. "We're clear," the awakened man said, a note of relief in his voice. "Set course for the cradle." Marcus adjusted the controls, feeling a sense of purpose surge within him. The coordinates flickered on the screen, guiding them toward the unknown. "We're on our way." As the ship hurtled through space, Marcus turned to his comrades. "This is it, gentlemen. We're about to uncover the truth of our existence. Whatever happens next, we do this together." The soldiers nodded, their expressions resolute. They were ready to face whatever awaited them, united in their quest for answers. But as the stars streaked by outside, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The council's eyes were everywhere, and they would not rest until humanity was crushed once and for all. The silence of space enveloped them as the ship sailed through the cosmos. Stars flickered in the vast expanse, and the darkness felt both comforting and eerie. Marcus sat at the helm, his mind racing with thoughts of the cradle and the secrets it held. The awakening of humanity's latent potential was just the beginning, but would they be ready to embrace it? "Steady as she goes," the awakened man said, his fingers dancing over the controls. The ship hummed gently beneath them, a living entity propelling them into the unknown. "We'll reach the cradle in a few hours, but we need to stay vigilant. The council won't let us escape so easily." The crew, now bonded through their shared experiences, took turns monitoring the ship's systems and scanning for any signs of pursuit. Wells kept a vigilant eye on the sensors, ensuring they remained undetected, while the rest of the soldiers maintained a readiness that was palpable. "Any signs of the council?" Marcus asked, glancing back at Wells, who was intently studying the readouts. "Nothing yet, but I don't trust this quiet," Wells replied, brow furrowed. "They're likely regrouping and preparing to send ships after us. We have to be prepared for anything." Marcus nodded, the weight of leadership settling heavily on his shoulders. He had never imagined leading a group into space, much less as the pilot of a ship that could very well be their lifeline. But with each passing minute, he felt more at home in this role. The resolve he felt in his chest was the same fire that had driven him to rise against the Council in the first place. As the hours passed, the anticipation grew. Marcus could almost feel the pull of the cradle, a magnetic force, drawing them toward its mysteries. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into a realm where time and reality danced differently. The tales of the cradle had always seemed fantastical, but now it felt like a tangible destination. Just as he was lost in thought, alarms blared through the cabin, shattering the calm. Red lights flashed, and the ship's systems chimed in alarm. "Alert!" Wells shouted, rushing to the control panel. "We've been detected." "Shit, how many?" Marcus barked, his heart racing. 3 Council ships on an intercept course, Wells reported, his fingers flying over the controls. "They're armed and ready for a fight." Marcus's breath quickened. "Can we outrun them?" The awakened man shook his head. "Not without diverting power from the shields. We'll have to fight." A surge of adrenaline coursed through Marcus. "All right, everyone, prepare for combat. We'll need to hold them off long enough to reach the cradle." The soldiers jumped into action, each one assuming their positions. Marcus felt a rush of pride. These were men forged in battle, ready to face the Council's wrath. They had been pushed to their limits, and now they were fighting not just for survival, but for the future of humanity. "Wells, plot a course to the cradle," Marcus instructed, adrenaline fueling his commands. "We need to get there before they can stop us." "Already on it," Wells replied, focused intently on the navigation screen. "But I can't guarantee we'll make it without taking some hits." "Then we'll make those hits count," Marcus said, gripping the controls. "Prepare the weapons." As the ship shuddered under the strain of the impending battle, Marcus's focus sharpened. The Council ships loomed closer, their dark silhouettes stark against the backdrop of stars. He could see the glint of weaponry, the ominous promise of destruction. 3 ships, all armed, the awakened man confirmed, his voice steady. "They'll try to surround us. We need to break their formation." Marcus nodded, adrenaline surging through his veins. "We'll use their own tactics against them." "Wells, get us into a tight spiral. It'll make it harder for them to lock on." "On it," Wells shouted, initiating the maneuver. The ship tilted and spiraled, darting through the void like a comet. The Council ships adjusted, but they weren't fast enough. As the first shots fired, beams of energy arced through the darkness. Marcus felt the jolt of impact reverberate through the hull, a reminder of the stakes they were facing. "Return fire," he yelled, urging his crew onward. The ship's weapons lit up, twin turrets rotating to unleash a barrage of energy bolts. They struck one of the Council ships directly, sending it spiraling out of control. A cheer erupted among the soldiers, but Marcus knew it was just the beginning. "2 down," Wells shouted, his voice filled with exhilaration. "But they're regrouping. They'll come at us hard now." "Then we'll give them something to remember," Marcus declared, determination flooding his veins. He could feel the heartbeat of the ship, the pulse of its systems mirroring the fight within him. As the battle raged, the ship danced through the void, weaving in and out of enemy fire. The Council ships were formidable, but they were no match for the tenacity and ingenuity of Marcus's crew. With each successful maneuver, Marcus felt their collective strength growing, transforming them from soldiers into warriors. "Keep an eye on the engines," the awakened man warned, focused on maintaining the ship's trajectory. "We need to conserve power. If they breach our shields, we'll be sitting ducks." "Understood," Wells replied, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'll reroute power to the shield generators." As the ship continued to dodge and weave, Marcus felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him, but he couldn't falter now. With each enemy ship that fell, each skirmish won, he could feel humanity's dormant power awakening within him. They were no longer just soldiers, they were gods of war, rising to reclaim their legacy. "Engaging evasive maneuvers," Marcus announced, his voice calm amidst the chaos. "We'll push through and reach the cradle. Stay sharp, everyone." The ship surged forward, darting through the stars as Marcus expertly navigated through enemy fire. He felt the thrill of combat igniting a fire within him, an unyielding spirit that had been dormant for far too long. He had embraced the essence of humanity's resilience, and he would not back down. Just as it seemed they might escape, a new alarm blared, the ship's sensors detecting an unexpected presence. Marcus's heart sank as he caught a glimpse of a massive ship emerging from the darkness, larger than anything he had ever seen. "Reinforcements?" Wells breathed, his eyes widening. "No," the awakened man said, eyes narrowing. "That's an advanced council dreadnought. It must have been hidden, waiting for us to show our cards." "Damn it! They're not letting us go," Marcus growled, tightening his grip on the controls. "We have to push harder." The dreadnought's cannons charged, and the ship shuddered as the first blasts fired, impacting the shields with a resounding boom. Alarms blared, and Marcus fought to keep the ship steady, even as the impact sent jolts through their bodies. "Reinforcements are en route," Wells called out, sweat dripping down his face. "But they'll take time. We need to hold on." Marcus's heart raced as he felt the pressure mount. They had to survive long enough to reach the cradle. "Divert all remaining power to the shields," he commanded, determination hardening in his voice. "We're not going down without a fight." The ship trembled as they poured everything into their defenses. The dreadnought loomed closer, its presence overwhelming, but Marcus refused to give in. They were warriors, the vanguard of humanity's awakening. With every ounce of strength, they pushed forward, defying the odds. The ship roared as they faced the dreadnought head-on, and Marcus felt the rush of battle propel him onward. This was their moment, and he would not let it slip away. The dreadnought loomed before them like a great beast, its dark hull bristling with weaponry. Marcus could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation of battle settling heavily on his shoulders. The ship quaked as another volley of energy blasts struck their shields, sending vibrations through the control panel. "Status report," Marcus shouted, trying to maintain control amid the chaos. "Shields at 30% and dropping," Wells called back, eyes darting across the readouts. "We won't last long at this rate." The awakened man, his face stern and resolute, turned to Marcus. "We need to change tactics. If we keep taking hits like this, we'll be out of the fight before reinforcements arrive. We have to find a way to disable their weapons." "Agreed," Marcus replied, steeling himself. "If we can knock out their primary cannons, we'll have a fighting chance." "Wells, can you target their weapons systems?" the awakened man asked. "Trying to get a lock," Wells grunted, his fingers flying across the controls. "It won't be easy. The dreadnought is heavily shielded. I'll need a moment." Marcus's heart raced as the dreadnought continued to pummel them with energy blasts. "We don't have a moment," he yelled, adrenaline surging through him. "We're not running, we're fighting back." "Roger that," Wells replied, grit in his voice. "I'll do my best." The ship shuddered again as another hit rocked their hull, and Marcus felt the fear creeping in. But alongside it was a fierce determination. They were not just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for the future of humanity itself. "Okay, here we go," Wells said, his voice steady. "I'm locking onto their weapon systems. On my mark, I'll fire the missile salvos." "Do it," Marcus commanded, his voice unwavering. As Wells initiated the targeting sequence, Marcus focused on piloting the ship. He maneuvered them into a tight spiral, using their speed to throw off the dreadnought's aim. Every second felt like an eternity, the dreadnought's fire illuminating the void around them. "Missiles ready," Wells shouted, excitement threading his voice. "I've got a lock. Firing now." The ship jolted as Wells unleashed a volley of missiles, each one streaking toward the dreadnought like a bolt of lightning. Marcus watched with bated breath as they closed the distance. A moment later, they struck the dreadnought's weapons array, explosions lighting up the dark expanse. "Direct hits," Wells cheered, but Marcus kept his eyes on the dreadnought. The massive ship faltered momentarily, but its shields held firm. "Damn it," Marcus cursed, frustration boiling within him. "We need to get in closer. If we can breach their defenses, we can do real damage." The awakened man nodded, determination etched on his face. "Let's close the distance and find a weak point. We can't let them regroup." "Hang on," Marcus yelled, steering the ship directly toward the dreadnought. They dodged incoming fire, the ship swerving with practiced ease. The thrill of battle surged through him, fueling his resolve. As they neared the dreadnought, Wells's fingers danced over the controls, rapidly recalibrating their targeting systems. "I'm trying to get another lock on their primary systems," he reported. "If we can hit the power core, we can cripple them." "Then do it," Marcus shouted, his heart racing. The dreadnought loomed closer, its imposing size growing in their view. Just as they reached optimal firing range, a powerful blast struck the ship, sending them careening off course. Alarms blared, and Marcus struggled to regain control. "Status," he barked. "Shields at 10%, Wells replied, panic creeping into his voice. "We're losing power." Marcus gritted his teeth, anger surging within him. "We will not back down," he maneuvered the ship with renewed vigor, intent on striking back. With a surge of adrenaline, he lined up their trajectory. "Wells, prepare for a last-ditch effort. Target their power core." "Almost there," Wells shouted, eyes fixed on the readouts. "Just a bit more." As they dodged another round of energy blasts, the dreadnought's enormous silhouette loomed ever closer. The thrill of combat surged through Marcus, a fire igniting deep within him. They were on the brink of victory, but they had to hold on just a little longer. "Now, Wells," Marcus yelled, locking onto the power core with a fierce determination. "Fire everything we have." Wells unleashed a torrent of energy blasts, the ship shaking with the force of the attack. The energy bolts struck the dreadnought's core, and the ship erupted in a blinding explosion of light. The shockwave reverberated through space, and Marcus shielded his eyes, feeling the raw power of the blast wash over them. "Did we do it?" Wells shouted, staring at the screen. The dreadnought shuddered, its shields flickering, then collapsing under the onslaught. Marcus could hardly believe it. They had pierced through the enemy's defenses. "Keep firing," he ordered, feeling the rush of victory surging through him. The crew rallied, and energy blasts lit up the dark void as they continued their assault. The Council ship began to falter, listing to one side as fires erupted across its hull. "We've got them on the ropes," the awakened man declared, voice filled with elation. "We can't let up now." Marcus pushed the ship forward, determination flooding his veins. They had awakened something primal within themselves, a force that could not be extinguished. "For humanity," he roared, the battle cry echoing through the cabin. The dreadnought's cannons fired one last time, a desperate act of defiance, but the shots went wide, missing their mark entirely. The Council ship, now a burning wreck, began to drift, its once formidable presence reduced to mere fragments. "Yeah, we did it," Wells shouted, triumph in his voice. "We brought down the dreadnought." Cheers erupted among the crew as Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. They had fought against insurmountable odds and emerged victorious. "All right, everyone, regroup," Marcus commanded, heart still racing. "We need to make sure there are no more threats before we continue to the cradle." As they took a moment to assess their surroundings, the crew's cheers began to fade, replaced by the realization of what lay ahead. The cradle was close now, a mysterious destination filled with the secrets of humanity's past. "Wells, plot a course to the cradle," Marcus instructed, his voice steady. "Let's see what awaits us there." As the ship adjusted its trajectory, Marcus felt a sense of purpose washing over him. The battle was far from over, but they had taken the first step toward reclaiming their legacy. "Everyone, prepare for arrival," he announced, adrenaline still thrumming in his veins. "We're about to uncover the truth." The stars around them blurred as the ship accelerated toward the cradle, a celestial body shrouded in mystery and legend. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing an invisible threshold, one that would change everything. Approaching the cradle, Wells announced, his voice steady despite the excitement bubbling beneath the surface. The view screen displayed the enigmatic planet, a swirling mass of greens and blues, with ethereal light cascading from its surface. Getting readings now, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. What do you mean? The awakened man asked, leaning closer to the control panel. What's so special about it? Life readings are off the charts, Wells replied, brow furrowed in concentration. This place is teeming with bioluminescent flora and fauna. It's almost as if the planet itself is alive. Marcus felt a thrill of anticipation at the thought. This is where it all began, he murmured, remembering the stories he'd heard from his grandfather about the ancient home of humanity's greatest warriors. It was here that they would uncover the secrets that had been buried for millennia. Prepare for landing, Marcus ordered, focusing on the descent. Wells, keep an eye on those readings. We don't know what kind of wildlife or sentient beings might be on this planet. As they broke through the atmosphere, the ship shook, turbulence battering them as they navigated the colorful clouds. The vibrant hues swirled around them, creating an almost dreamlike quality. Marcus steadied the controls, feeling the weight of the moment. He was not just a pilot anymore. He was a leader, a warrior on the brink of rediscovering his people's legacy. The ship broke through the clouds, revealing a breathtaking landscape below a dense jungle, lush and verdant, filled with towering trees that reached toward the sky. Strange, glowing creatures flitted between the branches, casting an otherworldly light across the ground. Touching down, Marcus said, his heart racing as the ship landed with a soft thud. Everyone, gear up. We're going on an expedition. The crew moved swiftly, donning protective gear and preparing equipment for exploration. Marcus could sense the anticipation in the air, a palpable energy that coursed through them all. They were on the verge of something monumental. Let's move out, Marcus commanded, stepping down the ramp and into the vibrant wilderness. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers, an intoxicating mixture that made him feel alive. As they ventured into the jungle, Wells activated his scanning device, taking readings of the local flora and fauna. This place is incredible, he said, awe spilling from his voice. I've never seen plants like these before. Some of them have properties that could revolutionize medicine. Focus on the task at hand, Marcus reminded him, scanning the area for any signs of danger. The jungle was alive with sounds, chirps, rustles, and distant calls that echoed around them, creating an almost symphonic backdrop. But amid the beauty lay an undercurrent of danger, a reminder that they were intruders in this world. The deeper they went, the more surreal their surroundings became. Glowing flowers bloomed in a myriad of colors, illuminating the path ahead. Strange creatures scurried past, their bioluminescent bodies leaving trails of shimmering light in their wake. What do you think the cradle holds? The awakened man asked, his voice a mix of wonder and reverence. Is it a weapon, knowledge, or something else entirely? I believe it's a key, Marcus replied, his mind racing with possibilities. A key to our past and our future. Whatever happened here, it shaped who we are. They pressed on, weaving through the thick underbrush until they reached a clearing. In the center stood an enormous structure, its design both alien and familiar, a colossal monolith that appeared to pulse with energy. Vines wrapped around it, the glowing flora seeming to respond to their presence. Is this it? Wells breathed, eyes wide. The cradle? Marcus stepped forward, feeling a magnetic pull toward the structure. It must be. He approached the monolith, reaching out to touch its surface. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy coursed through him, flooding his senses. Visions flooded his mind, images of ancient warriors, battles fought, and a civilization that thrived before the stars. He saw the struggles and triumphs of his ancestors, the very essence of humanity woven into their spirit. Suddenly, he was jolted back to reality, stumbling away from the monolith. What just happened? He gasped, heart racing. I don't know, the awakened man replied, concern etched on his face. But you looked like you were in a trance. I saw everything, Marcus said, breathless. This place is more than just a monument. It's a repository of our history, our power. It's calling to us. Calling to us? Wells echoed, skepticism creeping into his voice. What do you mean? Before Marcus could respond, the ground trembled beneath them. The monolith began to glow brighter, pulsating with a rhythm that matched the pounding of Marcus's heart. What's happening? The awakened man shouted, looking around in alarm. Get back, Marcus yelled, instincts kicking in as he sensed the impending danger. We need to move. A deafening roar erupted from the depths of the jungle, shaking the ground beneath them. A massive creature emerged from the foliage, a beast unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Its scales shimmered like jewels in the dim light, and its eyes glowed with a fierce intelligence. Fall back, Marcus shouted, adrenaline surging. They retreated as the creature charged forward, the ground quaking beneath its weight. Wells, scan it, Marcus yelled, trying to keep his composure. What are we dealing with? It's a guardian, Wells stammered, frantically typing on his device. A bioengineered sentinel designed to protect the cradle. Protect it from what? The awakened man shouted, dodging the creature's massive claws. From intruders, Wells replied, fear and awe mingling in his voice. The guardian unleashed another roar, and Marcus felt the air vibrate with its fury. They were not just facing a beast, they were confronting the very essence of their past, a test of worthiness. Stand together, Marcus shouted, positioning himself in front of his crew. We've awakened something powerful, but we are not afraid. We will prove ourselves worthy. With that, they prepared to face the guardian, hearts pounding in unison. This was not just a battle for survival. It was a battle for humanity's legacy, a legacy that had lain dormant for far too long. The guardian loomed over them, an embodiment of both ancient fury and protective resolve. Its scales glinted in the shifting light, and each powerful breath it took seemed to shake the very air around them. Marcus could feel his heart racing, adrenaline surging through his veins as he squared his shoulders, rallying his crew for the impending confrontation. Stay focused, he shouted, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. We need to distract it, buy ourselves some time. Wells fumbled with his scanning device, eyes darting between the creature and his readings. It has weak points, underbelly and eyes. If we can hit those, we might stand a chance. The awakened man, standing beside Marcus, nodded, determination burning in his eyes. Let's do this. We can't let it take us down without a fight. The guardian charged forward, its massive claws slicing through the air like blades. Marcus instinctively ducked, rolling to the side as the ground erupted where he had just stood. He sprang to his feet, adrenaline pushing him into action. Now, attack its eyes. The crew sprang into action, Wells tossing a small explosive device toward the creature. The explosion rocked the area, a bright flash momentarily blinding the guardian. Marcus took the opportunity to launch himself forward, aiming for the creature's left eye with a sharp blade crafted from the advanced materials they had salvaged from the ship. The blade connected, and the guardian let out a deafening roar, thrashing its massive head in pain. Marcus felt a rush of exhilaration as he realized they might have a chance. Keep attacking. Target the weak points. The awakened man charged alongside him, firing his weapon at the guardian's underbelly. The blast echoed through the jungle, and the creature stumbled, trying to regain its footing. But even as they pressed their advantage, Marcus felt a deep sense of respect for the guardian. This was a being born of humanity's ingenuity, a protector forged from the very essence of their legacy. And yet, here they were, fighting against it. Wells, find a way to communicate with it, Marcus shouted, dodging another swipe from the guardian's claw. We might not need to fight. I'll try, Wells yelled back, fingers flying over his device. It's responding to the energy pulses we're emitting. If we can harmonize with it. The guardian charged again, and Marcus could see the determination in its glowing eyes. It was not just a mindless beast. It was aware, intelligent, and fighting to defend its purpose. He had to find a way to reach it. Everyone, cease fire, Marcus commanded, his voice rising above the chaos. We need to stop fighting." The crew hesitated, glancing at him in confusion, but he held up a hand. "Trust me, we need to show it we mean no harm." With a deep breath, Marcus stepped forward, lowering his weapon. "Guardian," he shouted, his voice echoing in the clearing. "We seek not to harm, but to understand. We are not your enemies." The creature paused, its eyes narrowing as it considered his words. For a moment, the jungle was silent, the tension hanging in the air like a fragile thread. Then, slowly, the Guardian lowered its massive head, peering at Marcus with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Wells seized the opportunity. "I'm attempting to harmonize our energy signatures. If it works, it might recognize us as allies." His fingers flew over the device, adjusting settings as he focused on the Guardian. "Do it," Marcus urged, his heart pounding as he held the creature's gaze. "We are here to awaken the past, to reclaim our legacy. We are the descendants of the warriors you protect." With a sudden pulse of energy, Wells activated his device. A harmonious wave radiated from it, intertwining with the Guardian's energy. The creature hesitated, then stepped back, its eyes shimmering with an otherworldly light. "Keep it steady," Marcus shouted, feeling a surge of hope. "We're getting through." As the energy enveloped them, images flooded Marcus's mind once again, visions of the Guardian standing watch over the cradle, protecting humanity's greatest secrets, waiting for the day they would return. It had been dormant, just like humanity itself, awaiting a worthy successor. Suddenly, the Guardian let out a low rumble, a sound that resonated deep within Marcus's bones. It stepped closer, lowering itself to the ground, as if inviting them to approach. "Wells, I think it's responding," Marcus exclaimed, taking cautious steps toward the creature. "We need to show it we come in peace." The crew followed his lead, approaching slowly, weapons lowered. The Guardian watched them intently, its glowing eyes filled with ancient wisdom. "Please, let us understand," Marcus spoke softly, feeling the weight of history bearing down on him. "We want to learn, to awaken the power within us." The Guardian's massive form shimmered, and with a low growl, it turned and began to walk toward the monolith. It stopped, glancing back at Marcus and the crew as if urging them to follow. "Let's go," Marcus said, his heart pounding with excitement. This was their chance to uncover the secrets of the cradle, to reconnect with their legacy. They followed the Guardian as it led them back to the monolith, the pulsating light growing brighter as they approached. Marcus felt a deep connection forming between them, an understanding that transcended words. As they reached the base of the structure, the Guardian paused, bowing its massive head. The ground trembled beneath them, and the monolith began to glow in response, a brilliant light enveloping them all. "What's happening?" Wells shouted, stumbling as the energy surged. "I can't keep the reading steady." "Just hold on," Marcus yelled, feeling a rush of energy surge through him. It was as if the very essence of humanity was awakening, igniting a fire within their souls. In that moment, Marcus understood they were not merely descendants of warriors. They were warriors themselves, dormant gods awakened by their own determination and the connection they forged with the Guardian. The light enveloped them completely, and Marcus felt the power of the cradle resonating within him, memories and abilities surfacing, ready to be harnessed. This was just the beginning, the first step on a path that would lead them to reclaim their place among the stars. The brilliance of the light from the monolith surrounded Marcus and his crew, wrapping them in an ethereal glow that pulsed with life. Within this radiant cocoon, he could feel the presence of the Guardian and the lingering echoes of ancient power that reverberated through his very being. It was as if the essence of every warrior who had ever walked the earth was rising to meet him, awakening the dormant strength that lay within. As the intensity of the light subsided, Marcus found himself standing in a vast chamber, its walls lined with intricate carvings depicting battles long past. Scenes of valor and sacrifice came to life, illustrating humanity's triumphs against insurmountable odds. Each story depicted the strength, resilience, and ingenuity that defined their species. "Look at this," Wells exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder as he examined the carvings. These are the records of humanity's greatest moments, our battles, our victories. Yeah, but we need to focus, Marcus replied, scanning the chamber for any signs of danger. The Guardian remained at the entrance, a vigilant protector watching over them. We can't forget why we're here. We need to harness this power, to awaken it fully. As they moved deeper into the chamber, the walls began to shimmer with energy, resonating with the presence of the Guardian. Each carving seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the stories becoming more vivid, more real. Marcus could feel the call of history, urging him to connect with it, to embrace the legacy of those who had come before. "What do we do?" the awakened man asked, glancing nervously at Marcus. "How do we tap into this power?" Marcus took a deep breath, recalling the Guardian's earlier actions. "We need to channel our intentions and our strength. Focus on our purpose, our desire to protect, to fight for what is right." Wells adjusted his device, sending out another harmonic pulse. "I'll sync our energies with the monolith. If we can establish a connection, it might amplify our abilities." "Do it!" Marcus shouted, feeling the rush of energy surge through him again. He closed his eyes, envisioning the stories of the past, the warriors who had fought valiantly, and the lives they had touched. Each tale filled him with strength, igniting a fire within. As Wells calibrated the device, a wave of energy pulsed through the chamber, intertwining with the Guardian's essence. The carvings along the walls began to glow, illuminating the chamber in a kaleidoscope of colors, each hue resonating with the essence of the stories it told. "Keep pushing," Marcus urged, feeling the connection deepen. "We can do this." The room trembled, and the Guardian stepped forward, raising its head and letting out a powerful roar that echoed through the chamber. The sound reverberated within Marcus, pushing him to the forefront of his own consciousness, where he could truly feel the dormant power stirring. Suddenly, the carvings shifted, and a vision materialized in front of them, a battle between humanity and a colossal alien armada, a dark tide threatening to engulf their world. Marcus recognized the familiar symbols of their enemies, the Thalaxians, a race known for their ruthless conquest and insatiable hunger for power. "They've come to invade Earth again," Marcus realized, his heart racing as he saw his own face among the defenders in the vision. "This is what we're up against." Wells continued adjusting the device, desperate to harness the energy coursing through the chamber. "If we can awaken the warriors within us, we can stand against them." The vision shifted again, showing humanity fighting back with ingenuity, using their creativity to outsmart the Thalaxians. It revealed the tactics that had led to their victories in the past, strategies that employed not just brute strength, but cunning, deception, and unity. "We need to unite," Marcus shouted, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Every human needs to awaken this power. We can't fight alone." The Guardian rumbled in agreement, the vibrations resonating through the chamber. The glowing carvings began to shift once more, revealing a pathway leading to the heart of the monolith. "Let's go," Marcus urged, leading the way down the illuminated path. Each step filled him with anticipation, the air thick with energy and possibility. As they reached the heart of the monolith, they found themselves standing before a massive crystal pulsating with light. It resonated with the energy of every warrior who had ever fought for humanity, and Marcus felt an overwhelming urge to touch it. "Marcus, wait," Wells warned, but it was too late. He reached out, placing his hand on the crystal. Instantly, a surge of energy coursed through him, flooding his senses with visions of battles fought and lives lost. The crystal was a repository of knowledge, a beacon of hope that radiated through the cosmos. Images swirled in his mind, a vast network of connections, each one a thread binding humanity together. They were not alone. The universe was vast, and within it lay the potential for alliances that spanned galaxies. As the energy enveloped him, Marcus felt himself transformed, his very essence intertwining with the legacy of humanity's warriors. He was no longer just a soldier, he was a vessel of their collective strength, a harbinger of hope. "Wells, we need to send this energy out," Marcus shouted, the urgency pressing upon him. "We have to awaken everyone, remind them of who they are." Wells nodded, his fingers flying over the device. "I can broadcast a signal, but it has to be strong enough to reach beyond our planet." "Then let's do it," Marcus urged, the power of the crystal still coursing through him. "We have to unite humanity before the Thalaxians arrive." With a deep breath, Wells initiated the broadcast. The crystal pulsed in response, sending out a wave of energy that rippled through the very fabric of reality. "Come on," Marcus urged, feeling the rush of energy surge through him as he joined Wells in the effort. "We can do this." As the energy flowed out into the cosmos, a deep sense of purpose filled Marcus. They were not just warriors, they were the inheritors of a legacy, and they would rise to meet the challenges ahead. "We'll prepare for battle," Marcus declared, feeling the connection to the Guardian and the crystal solidify. "But we'll do it as one, every human, every ally, together." The chamber resonated with agreement, and the Guardian stepped forward, towering over them. It raised its head high, its eyes glowing with fierce determination. "Together, we will reclaim our legacy." The chamber pulsed with an electrifying energy, the air crackling with the promise of unity and strength. Marcus felt the vibrations resonate within him, echoing the call of every warrior who had ever fought for humanity. The Guardian loomed before them, a colossal sentinel of hope, and Marcus knew that their moment was at hand. "Wells, how long will it take for the signal to reach everyone?" Marcus asked, urgency thrumming through him as he gazed at the device. "Not long," Wells replied, his fingers dancing across the interface. "But we need to ensure the frequency is strong enough. I'm amplifying it now." Marcus nodded, turning his attention back to the crystal at the center of the chamber. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat, a beacon that seemed to call out to the universe. He focused, channeling his thoughts toward it, urging it to awaken the warriors dormant within every human. "Feel the power," he shouted, trying to ignite the same fire in Wells. "This is our legacy, we can't let it fade." The carvings on the walls shimmered in response, and the Guardian stepped closer, placing a massive hand on the crystal. In that moment, a surge of energy flowed from the Guardian, weaving into the crystal and amplifying its light. "Together, we channel the strength of humanity," the Guardian intoned, its voice deep and resonant. "Awaken the dormant within you." Marcus felt a connection ignite within him, a deep understanding of his purpose. The Guardian's energy intertwined with his own, enhancing his resolve. "Wells, we need to project the vision, show them what they are capable of." "Right," Wells replied, adjusting the settings on the device as it began to hum with power. "I'll upload the imagery, everything we've seen in this chamber, every battle, every triumph." As Wells worked, Marcus turned to the Guardian. "Can you help us amplify the signal even further? We need to reach every corner of Earth." The Guardian nodded, its eyes glowing brighter. "I will lend my strength to your cause. Together, we will awaken them." With that, the Guardian released a powerful roar, filling the chamber with energy that surged outward. Marcus could feel it resonate deep within him, awakening something primal and ancient. The monolith responded, the light intensifying as the Guardian's essence flowed into it. "Let's do this," Wells shouted, pressing the final button on the device. A wave of energy radiated from the crystal, shimmering with images of humanity's past glories, images of defiance, resilience, and unity. "Now," Marcus urged, feeling the power coursing through him. "Let it spread." The energy shot out like a beacon, cutting through the dark void of space and reaching out to every human being on Earth. As the wave pulsed through the atmosphere, it carried with it the essence of the warrior, reminding each person of their dormant potential. "Do you feel it?" Wells asked, his voice thick with awe. "It's working." Marcus closed his eyes, channeling his own power into the signal, urging it to penetrate deeper, to reach those who had forgotten their strength. He envisioned families gathering, communities coming together, the whispers of history igniting a fire in their hearts. "Awaken," he shouted, feeling the energy resonate within him. "Remember who you are." As the wave of energy spread, something remarkable began to happen. In cities and towns across the globe, People paused, their hearts pounding with the sudden surge of ancient knowledge. Memories long buried emerged of battles fought, of unity in the face of adversity. Across the planet, men and women turned their eyes skyward, feeling the call of their ancestors. In cafes and offices, in parks and homes, they shared stories of resilience, recalling the times when humanity stood together against impossible odds. "Look," Wells exclaimed, pointing at the interface. "We're getting readings from everywhere. They're responding." Marcus felt a swell of pride and determination as the readings flickered across the screen. People were awakening, their hearts ignited by the same fire that burned within him. "We need to harness this," Marcus urged. "Let's focus on the areas where the response is strongest." Wells navigated the readings, pulling up maps that highlighted the regions most affected. "This is incredible. We can coordinate our efforts, mobilize people where they're responding the most." "Let's get them organized," Marcus replied, determination fueling his words. "We can't wait for the Thalaxians to strike. We need to prepare for battle." Wells quickly set up a communications grid, linking the various locations. "We can connect them all, create a network. Everyone can share their stories, their strengths." As the connections formed, the energy within the chamber surged. The Guardian's presence intensified, a reminder of the ancient power that flowed through them. "Are you ready?" the Guardian asked, its voice reverberating like thunder. "You are about to awaken the war gods within yourselves." Marcus nodded, feeling a fierce determination wash over him. "Let's do this, together." The energy within the chamber swelled, and the broadcast continued, reaching out to every corner of the globe. The stories of humanity resonated, merging into a single, unified voice that echoed through the air. Across the world, men and women joined together, feeling the call of the ancient warriors, their hearts swelling with pride and purpose. The barriers that had separated them began to crumble, replaced by a sense of unity and determination. "Together, we will rise," Marcus declared, his voice echoing through the chamber as the energy continued to build. "Together," the Guardian echoed, its voice joining the chorus of humanity. The light surrounding them intensified, illuminating the chamber as the last of the energy coalesced into a powerful beacon of hope. They could feel it, the awakening was complete. As the world responded, a distant rumble echoed from the skies. It was a sound that struck fear into the hearts of those who had long forgotten the taste of war. The Thalaxian fleet had arrived, massive ships descending upon Earth like dark clouds blotting out the sun. Marcus's heart raced as he felt the shift in the atmosphere. "They're here," he shouted, urgency igniting his voice. "We need to prepare." The Guardian's gaze sharpened, and its massive form seemed to swell with determination. "Then let us meet them with the strength of humanity." "Let's mobilize our forces," Wells shouted, his fingers racing across the controls. "We can use the connections we've made. We need to organize everyone for a coordinated defense." Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the fire of battle ignite within him. "We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for our legacy, for the future of humanity." With that, they set to work, channeling the energy that had been awakened in every human heart into a plan of action. The world was on the brink of war, but this time they would not face it alone. The atmosphere crackled with tension as Marcus and Wells coordinated their strategy within the chamber. The Guardian towered beside them, a living monument to humanity's potential. The Thalaxian fleet loomed overhead, colossal warships blotting out the sun, each one bristling with weapons designed to annihilate. "Listen up," Marcus bellowed, rallying the troops gathered around the communication grid. "We are the inheritors of an ancient legacy, warriors dormant no longer. The Thalaxians believe we are weak, but we will show them the strength that lies within our unity." The gathered humans, men from every corner of the earth, cheered, their spirits ignited by Marcus's words. They had come together, emboldened by the shared energy of their ancestors. "Wells, can we get a real-time visual on the Thalaxians?" Marcus asked, anxiety clawing at him. "Working on it," Wells replied, his fingers a blur as he navigated the interface. "Got it." Here's their formation, looks like they're preparing to bombard our major cities. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. We have to act fast. We need to disrupt their formation before they can strike. The Guardian nodded, its deep voice resonating through the chamber. I can channel energy to create a defensive shield. If you time it right, we can absorb their initial attack and give our forces a chance to retaliate. Let's do it, Marcus shouted. Wells, relay the message to our allies. Everyone needs to be in position. The command echoed through the network, and Marcus felt a surge of determination. They were fighting not just for their survival, but for the very essence of humanity, its creativity, resilience, and indomitable spirit. Ready when you are, the Guardian said, its eyes glowing with power. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the world coalesce within him. Now, the Guardian raised its massive hand, channeling energy into a shield that expanded outward, forming a protective barrier around the city. The Thalaxian ships unleashed a barrage of fire, but instead of chaos, the energy shield absorbed the blasts, transforming destruction into a radiant display of light. Great work, Wells exclaimed, his eyes wide with amazement. The shield is holding. Now it's our turn, Marcus shouted. Let's strike back. With a determined nod, he activated the communication grid again, urging the forces gathered on the ground to launch their counterattack. A surge of adrenaline rushed through him as he felt the collective will of humanity behind him. Artillery teams, fire on their flanks, he commanded, heart racing as the first round struck true. Air units, engage at will. The sound of explosions filled the air, and for the first time, the Thalaxian ships staggered under the pressure. The tide of battle was shifting, and Marcus could feel the awakening of the dormant warriors in every man fighting alongside him. Push forward, Marcus shouted, his voice a rallying cry. Let them know we will not be cowed. With each explosion and each roar of victory, the camaraderie among the men grew stronger. They fought as one, a united front against the alien menace, and the Thalaxians began to realize they had underestimated humanity. Look, Wells exclaimed, pointing at the screen. They're faltering. Our forces are gaining ground. As the battle raged on, Marcus caught sight of a Thalaxian flagship moving to reposition for a counterstrike. A wave of determination surged within him. I'm going to take that ship down. Are you insane? Wells asked, wide-eyed. It's a flagship. We need to focus on the ground forces. No, Marcus replied, fire in his eyes. If we take out their command ship, we can cripple their entire fleet. We'll turn the tide of this war. With a resolute nod, Marcus gathered a small team of fighters and headed toward a transport ship. We'll make a run for it. Trust me. As they lifted off, the ground battle raged below them. Marcus felt the weight of his decision, but he knew that they had to seize this opportunity. The flagship loomed ahead, its defenses formidable, but he had a plan. Wells, can you keep me updated on their movements? Marcus asked as he piloted the ship toward the target. On it, Wells replied, tapping away at the console. They're starting to regroup, but they're vulnerable on the left side. Let's go for it, Marcus shouted, adrenaline coursing through him as they closed the distance. They dodged enemy fire, the ship shaking as explosions erupted around them. Steady, steady, Marcus murmured, focusing on the task at hand. We can do this. The flagship's massive structure loomed closer, and Marcus guided the transport ship toward the unguarded flank. Prepare to engage. Now, Wells shouted, and Marcus pressed the trigger. The ship unleashed a volley of missiles, striking the flagship with devastating force. It shuddered, and for a moment, the enemy's defenses faltered. We did it, Wells cheered, his voice ringing with excitement. We're breaching their defenses. But the Thalaxians weren't done yet. A counterattack erupted from the flagship, and the transport ship shook violently. Brace for impact, Marcus yelled, gripping the controls as they spun out of control. With a determined pull, he regained control just as they crashed through the flagship's outer defenses, bursting into its internal corridors. "Let's go," Marcus shouted, leading the way. They burst into the main command center, weapons drawn. The room was a frenzy of activity, Thalaxians scrambling in panic as the humans charged in. Marcus's heart raced as he fought through the chaos, the dormant warrior within him fully awakened. "Take out their command," he shouted to his team, and they fell into formation. As they fought their way through the command center, Marcus's determination surged. They were taking the fight directly to the enemy, and he could feel the tide turning in favor of humanity. Then he spotted the Thalaxian commander, a towering figure with intricate armor. "This ends now," Marcus shouted, charging forward. The commander turned, surprise flashing across its face as Marcus lunged. They clashed in a fierce battle, the weight of every warrior who had ever fought for humanity surging through him. In a desperate maneuver, Marcus managed to disarm the commander, knocking its weapon aside. "This is for every life you've taken," he roared, driving his fist into the Thalaxian's chest. The commander fell, and with it, the command center erupted in chaos. Marcus felt a rush of victory as the Thalaxians around him faltered, confusion spreading like wildfire. "Victory!" Wells shouted through the comms. "The flagship is destabilizing." "Let's get out of here," Marcus ordered, retreating back through the corridors with his team as explosions rocked the ship. They fought their way out, racing back to their transport vessel just as the flagship began to break apart. They clambered aboard, and Marcus slammed the controls, urging the ship to fly away from the impending explosion. The flagship erupted behind them, a brilliant fireball illuminating the dark sky. "Did we do it?" Wells asked, breathless. "Yeah," Marcus replied, staring at the destruction left in their wake. "We did." As they soared back toward the battleground below, they could see the chaos had shifted. The Thalaxian forces were disoriented, their command structure shattered. Humanity was fighting back with newfound vigor. "We can win this," Marcus shouted, excitement surging through him. "Let's join our forces." The battle raged on, but with the flagship destroyed, humanity fought with renewed strength. The network of warriors held firm, the energy of their ancestors guiding them as they pushed forward, reclaiming their world from the invaders. In the aftermath, as the last remnants of the Thalaxian fleet retreated, Marcus felt a profound sense of unity. They had faced an overwhelming enemy, but through resilience and courage, they had awakened the dormant warriors within. Standing atop the ruins of a battlefield, Marcus turned to Wells. "This isn't just a victory, it's a rebirth. We've proven that humanity can rise to any challenge." Wells nodded, awe in his eyes. "We're not just survivors anymore, we are warriors." As they looked out at the horizon, the sun began to rise, casting a golden light over the landscape. It felt like the dawn of a new era, one where humanity would no longer hide in the shadows, but embrace its true potential. "Let's build a future worthy of our legacy," Marcus said, determination solidifying within him. "A future where we never forget the power that lies within us." With the Guardian by their side and the world behind them, they stepped into the light, ready to forge a new path. And in that moment, they understood. The dormant war gods had awakened, and humanity was ready to reclaim its place among the stars.